Okay, so when we first started estimating areas under a curve, remember that we used a Riemann sum? And we would either do a left endpoint or a right endpoint for what kind of a shape? Starts out with a curve, but what did we break this up into?
Rectangles.
Rectangles, correct. So we broke this up into rectangles. So let's use n equals 4 for our number of rectangles, but instead of using rectangles, Bennett, I would like to use a better shape that would give us a better estimate with less wasted space. So Bennett, what kind of shape do you think we could use?
A circle.
A circle, sure.
Outside the box.
We're going to try a trapezoid. If you were to make each one of these shapes trapezoids and use a diagonal slanted line there, isn't that giving you a better estimate
Heck yeah.
than what our rectangles would have done? So see, now what we're going to do is take each one of these shapes and just find the area of each trapezoid and add them together. So this is called trapezoidal rule. Add an AL at the end, and now you have an adjective form of trapezoid. So the trapezoidal rule. Like that. So how do I find the area of just one trapezoid?
1/2 base times that.
Plus base up to.
Area of a trapezoid. Hang on. 1/2 what?
Base 1 plus base 2.
Base times base 1 plus base 2. Okay. Times the height. Okay. Great. And why do I have two different bases? Because they're not the same. Because there are two different base dimensions.
Yeah.
So you have two different bases, and then you have a height. What's true about the height and the bases? What's the relationship between the height and the two bases? The height has to be perpendicular to both bases.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Hey, Miss Tony Adams says parallel.
Parallel. So I've asked you to use n equals 4, so that's going to be our number of trapezoids. What is going to be the height for each one of these trapezoids?
Looks like it'll be 1/2.
Because we would start out with that b minus a over n, right? Remember that from our rectangles? Because isn't the width of that rectangle now going to be the height of my trapezoid?
Mm-hmm.
So 2 minus 0 over 2? No, 4. Sorry, our n value was 4.
It's just 1.
So yes, it's just 1/2, correct? So I'm going to have 4 trapezoids. So to find the area of the first one, I would say 1/2 times base 1 plus base 2. Well, what is this base? 0. And I get that by plugging in 0 into x squared, right?
Yeah.
So that would be f of 0 plus, what's going to give me this second height? F of 0.5. And then I've got to multiply that by my height, which was 1/2. So there's one of my trapezoids. Now we'll find the next trapezoid, which would be 1/2. What is this base 1?
Oh, f of 0.5.
F of 0.5 plus f of 1 times 1/2. Plus 1/2. How do I find these bases?
It'd be f of 1.
F of 1.
And f of 1.5.
F of 1.5 times.
You did 0.5.
Thank you. Plus 1/2. F of
1.5.
1.5 plus f of 2 times 1/2. Okay, so do you notice that all of these have a 1/2 out front? So instead of writing that 1/2 every single time, couldn't I just factor that 1/2 out front?
Mm-hmm.
What other numbers do they all have in common?
Wait, they have
another
1/2, so that means
Right,
that
these
all
are the
be
two.
1/4.
Yes. But is this number always going to be a 1/2? This is the height of these particular trapezoids. If I went from 0 to 6, this value would not be 1/2.
So it'd be 1/2 height.
So it's going to be 1/2, and isn't each one of these your height?
Yeah.
Factor out x squared.
So I'd like for you, can you give me a minute? I don't have x squared in there yet. So, yes, we're factoring out 1/4, but is it always gonna be 1/4 in
No.
every problem?
Yeah.
No. The height will be different for every problem. Will this 1/2 be consistent in every problem?
Yeah.
Because that comes from the formula of a trapezoid. So we can take out this 1/2 and the 1/2 that in this particular situation is the height. So if I factor out all of those 1/2s, now we have a sum that's left over. Let's look at this sum. How many f of zeros do you really have? Just one of them. So you'll have f of 0 plus. Then wouldn't it be f of 0.5 plus another f of 0.5?
That'd be 2.
So you're gonna have 2 of those f of 0.5s because doesn't that interior base get used with 2 trapezoids? And then you'll have 2 of the f of 1s and 2 of the f of 1.5
Just one.
and then just 1 of the f of 2s. Okay, so let's figure out what this area would be estimated to be. This would be 1/4. What is f of 0? 0. What is f of 1/2? 1/2 squared.
It would be 2, it would be 0.25 and then it'd be multiplied by 2.
Yeah, 2 times 1/4.
So it'd just be 1/2.
Yeah, that'd just be 1/2. This one would be 2 times, what's f of 1?
Oh, just 1.
Just 1. What's f of 3/2?
It'd be 2.25.
Yeah, 9/4. And f of 2 would just be 4. 0 plus 1/2 plus 2 plus 9/2 plus 4.
That'd be 11 times 1/4.
Yep. Which would give us 11/4. So this step right here is what leads us to a trapezoidal rule formula. Can we pause that or stop it? I'll do a second.